Very warm welcome from my side. So my colleague Boris, he's a technology guy in our company, so he has to switch now the notebook, and I can start talking. And to let you know that I'm very happy to be here today. It's actually, I think, the first time after 3 years that I'm in Poland and invited to speak at the conference. And I really like to speak at conferences, I have to say. Boris knows. One of the reasons is that I'm at home. I have 4 kids. They are all in the teenage age. So you can estimate how much speaking time I have at home. So when I'm at conferences, I have today a full hour that I can talk and you have to listen, which is amazing for me. So first of all, a little bit of background about Boris and Axel. Some things you have to know about Boris and about the time we spent together. So actually, I was working as a managing director of the DEGW for Central Europe, starting in 2007 until 2014. And back in 2009, I got a call from Frank Duffy, who was the D in DEGW. And Frank said, hey Axel, there's a guy in Poland, he's sending me emails like every day that I need to come to Poland to speak at conferences that I'm not interested in. So could you please go and meet this guy? So there was a point in 2009 when I went to Poland to meet Boris. And I thought, wow, this is really a crazy person. This is something we need at the DEGW. So basically, almost a year later or half a year later, Boris joined DEGW and became managing director for DEGW in Poland and has started to build up the company and the business here. I would say the first workplace consultancy in Poland. Then there was a little small accident which happened in 2011, which was a time when DEGW was acquired by AECOM, which was DEGW, a small niche consultancy, globally like 300 people across all different countries, and AECOM at this time 50,000 people in the building industry, so completely different businesses. So what happened was there was a cultural clash, let's say, especially between Boris and the Americans at this time. So that Boris left in 2012 or beginning of 2012 and established Workplace Solutions in Poland. So I was a little bit harder. I took it 2 years longer. So end of 2014 I left AECOM and have established now WorkingWell in Germany as a business focusing on people in the workplace, and this is what we do. So Boris, we met back in June in Munich, and we're thinking about this kind of conference. What can we do? How can we do it? So I said, oh, I'm very happy to come and start talking about my experience, but not so much about experience about projects, but much more about the experience what happened in the last 10 years in our industry. So the good thing is when you start talking at a conference, you can start big, very big. So what is work? So there are, if you look to the different, in the internet, to different articles or to the knowledge in the internet, you will find 4 different categories of work. So we have the industrial work, we have welfare work, we have service work, and we have knowledge work. You can see everywhere, and what we know everywhere, that technology has changed all the different kinds of working. When you look, for example, to the welfare work, technology enables the people to deliver a better quality of work, to do less mistakes, also to be faster. But it's really about increasing the quality of the work. It's still done by human people, so by people. But they use the technology as a tool to deliver better work. If you go to service, in the service work, technology has changed this one as well. If you just think about the supermarket, where you don't have any people anymore, so technology is replacing people, basically, but also which has the impact that work is cheaper, it's faster, quality is better, less mistakes. And if you look to the industrial work, I think it's the most obvious example. If we go 50 years back and think about how cars are manufactured like 50 years ago, and how the same work is done today. It's looked like this, so it's also about efficiency, it's about timing, it's about speed, and it's all about replacement of people or human work through technology. Now what about knowledge work? Technology has changed knowledge work for sure. This is what we know. We are now with technology, we are faster, we do less mistakes, we can do more work. It's not really cheaper, but there is another thing that has changed in knowledge work. So we do a little bit of a quick survey. I have 4 pictures, and you need to just raise your hand if you think that this is work. So the first picture about knowledge work is this one. Who of you thinks that this is work? Almost everybody. Come on, a little bit more engagement. Then the second one is this work. This is something you will know from for sure from your offices as well. So is this work as well for you? Yes, it's work. The third one comes more special. So, but this is something you know from your own work as well. Is this work for you as well? Yes, it's work. So, and now the special one, the last one, which makes it more obvious, the point that I try to come to. Is this work? Would you say? Yes. We all think, okay, in those times today, this is work as well. So what happened, actually? What happened is about the place, the space. Yeah. So through the mobility we have, through technology, place becomes or gets a different purpose. Yeah. So space is not irrelevant. It makes space has a purpose today, but this has changed over the last years, enormous. Traditional, if you think about traditional workplaces, and with traditional, I'm not just talking about the past. This is also very common to build workplaces like this in today's times. Yeah? So building profit, symbols of profit, of control, of hierarchy, privacy, and also very much related to processes. Yeah? So this is how workplaces has been built over the last hundreds of years. It's still happening today, but it's changing a lot. So when we talk about modern workplaces, we don't talk about hierarchy and control and profit. Profitability comes at the end as a result. This is what we believe in. If you have happy people, if you look after your people, if you build spaces that people like and where they have a great experience, things like profit and commercial success will happen anyway. So purpose of modern workplaces is about empowering people. It's about creating networks. It's about creativity, and it's about transparency. Yeah, so there is nothing to hide anymore. So we are transparent anyway. Anybody is very transparent in today's times, but it's one of the, let's say, most important things is building networks, empowering people, and having transparency. But also within modern workspaces. And Boris was talking about the activity-based working, which was very common, especially until, as Boris said, mid-2000s. Yeah. So, but it already started in the mid-90s, where we have implemented projects all across Europe, mainly in the UK and in the Netherlands, which were focusing on efficiency. It's all about reducing square meter, reducing costs, very much real estate driven, those projects. Then activity-based working was the implementation of flexibility. So people were talking about different places to support different work, but basically the goal was the same. It's about reduction of square meter, reduction of euros per square meter, cost reduction program. And very, very obvious it became, in Germany at least, 2007, 2008, when the financial crisis started. All the financial organizations, whether it's Credit Suisse or UBS or Deutsche Bank or Allianz Insurance, they've all started programs around activity-based working and implementing desk sharing concepts with the goal to make work more flexible and reduce space and save money. Today, we talk about productivity in our projects. So people have realized, our clients have realized that there is a point where you could reduce from 9 square meter to 8.7 square meter. Does it change anything? No, it doesn't. So the focus is now much more on productivity, on collaboration, and increasing the output. And also it changed the type of projects. So our projects today are driven by the business, by IT and HR. And not so much anymore, or not just from real estate. Real estate is also a large component and always a key stakeholder in the projects, but it's on the same table as with the business, HR and IT. Example of this change, great example from actually this year. So this is a floor plate you can see from a building in Germany, a big corporation in a special industry. You can see it's a large floor plate. The project was implemented in 2010, and you can see you have the open plan office environment. You have a few focus areas and collaboration areas and a nice lounge, but it's mainly you can see it's mainly reduction of square meter per person. It's not just the square meter per working station, but it's also implementing desk sharing, a sharing ratio of 140%, which means that you have in this floor around 300 people, which was implemented in 2010. This summer, the same client came back to us and said, Axel, what Boris just said is happening. Axel, we would like, in 2010 they have refurbished the whole building with the exception of the ground floor, and now they would like to look into the ground floor, and they would like to implement an internal co-working space. So where people from the building, the whole building had around 3,500 people, and they would like to create a co-working space where people from the whole building can come and work, or even from the city where they have around 15,000 people in the same city, they can use as an internal co-working space for all different kinds of work. So which means for us it's also a different approach, because there is no typical user. You cannot go to any specific department or whatever to ask what are your needs, what do you need to have. So what we did is we've chosen a process from the design thinking and service design process. So we've created personas, which are representing the typical users or the typical employees of the company, and which goes from a person that is shortly before retiring to a part-time mother who is working, to a very young international guy. So this is representing, let's say, most of the population of most of the big organizations, and they all have a different, depending on where they are in the age, they have a different focus area, from well-being, about culture, digitalization. So this is what we created, and then we said, what are their needs, what are their requirements, what are their needs, and how can we transfer those needs into a space. And this is currently in the stage of approval process, hopefully will be built beginning of next year. So the result is a co-working space and a co-working location of around 3,000 square meters in the building. You can see the different impressions, but we actually have 18 different working zones, from formal to informal, from collaboration to individual, from relax to focus areas, all different kinds of working areas actually in the same space. So why is it possible? Because the business case has changed for most of the organizations. And this is what we see, or what I experience in every discussion I have, is that it's much more far away from efficiency to experience. So this is it's all about creating spaces that give the people that use it, to give them an experience. And I'm not just talking about the design, we'd also talk about service, and we talk about technology. How are those spaces serviced? And what is the kind of technology that people can use to do their work? So why is it happening? Why has a business case changed? Because we can see five big global trends that you can see here, and you can see also some numbers from different studies. What is happening about digitalization and globalization? Also about culture, and Ilka will talk about culture later on, and Boris about digitalization. But one of the key things that we can also see is about well-being. Yeah, it has to do with green, the greenest office that we will see later on. But well-being is also about nutrition, it's about health, it's about sports, it's about all the different things that make people happier at work. And especially healthier. There is a mind shift change in Central Europe that we can see about the awareness of people about health. Yeah, if you just look to smoking, not sure how it's in Poland, but it's if there are, let's say, the reduction of smokers is in the last 10 years, it's like 200% in Germany. Less people are less smoking. There's much more awareness about well-being. So, in those trends, they force the businesses, the corporations, to get answers or have answers for 5 key challenges, which is let's say every organization facing today. It's about living innovation, facilitating productivity, creating agility, attracting employees, and promoting sustainability. Which is the top priority? This is changing from client or from organization to organization, but those are almost the 5 big drivers and key challenges for every organization. One thing I will take out is about creating agility. Boris will talk about it later on as well. But agility is something we can see, which was like 3, 4, 5 years ago. Agility was a word that was very much connected with IT, agile working IT groups. What we can see today is that every organization is moving into the direction of an IT organization, just because the population of people with an IT background is a core requirement for every business, whether you are in the financial industry, in the automotive industry, in the service industry. Everybody is looking for IT people to work, and IT people usually don't work in waterfall processes and structures. They work agile, which is also seen in the offices, that you can see more and more agile workspaces or workspaces for agile teams. Challenge at all level, and this is my last point. I have now talked a lot about place, but at the same time, you have the people that are using the space, and which is at the end of the day the final goal to achieve, and you have to have productive people and happy people, and the technology, and basically all of them support the different challenges that the organizations are facing. So I'm now happy to hand over to Boris to talk about the second topic, the technology part.
So thank you, Axel. Thank you very much. I will move over to this part of the room so that your head becomes a little bit more relaxation from this end over to here. My name is Boris, and I love to digitize companies, businesses. So in my chest, 2 hearts are beating. The one is the sportsman, and the other is the techie, the nerd probably. So I've been studying sports as my academical background, but I've been working in technology ever since. Almost a decade of working on both sides of the table, IT strategy consultancy and big corporate companies gave me some interesting insights into a lot of companies and the technology they use. So I'm happy to be here today, thankful to share some of my core observations with you and think about what comes next, but probably more important for you guys and your business, what can you do next to have a successful digital transformation and a sustainable and competitive business in the future. So there's one interesting lesson that the professional sport taught me quite early. Professional sport uses technology, and you can't imagine sport today without the use of technology. But nevertheless, it is always and will always be athlete-centered. So the human being is always in the center of sports. So let's go down to some core observations right from the start. Talk about technology. Technology is not a support function of their business. It's a core function or even a value-creating function of your business today. You have to think about that. You have to be aware of that. And it is 100% consumerized. Who knows what consumerization is in this context? Just raise your hand. That's good. I will explain it. Consumerization is a very trendy word. It means if you as an employer do not provide your employees with the technology they need to get the job done, they will likely use technology they know from their private lives. Let me give you an example. You have to send a large file via email, but it doesn't work with email because it's too big. So what would you likely do to send this file to someone else? You would probably use your Dropbox, your private Dropbox account. And this is a big problem if you use Dropbox with sensitive company data, because it will probably not comply with your data privacy and security regulations of your company. And this is what happens right now. This is not the future. This happens right now. I've made a study with Dropbox once to understand and also to show the CIO of a media company how much shadow IT, that means how much private Dropbox accounts the employees are already using with corporate email addresses. And the number was very interesting. It was more than 50% of a 10,000 people company, a global company, that were using private Dropbox accounts. This is happening right now. I just want you to think about it. Think about what you provide your employees with in terms of technology so that they can get their job done. Understanding technology as an enabler, we also have to look at the human being, as Axel already mentioned. If we take as an example the automotive industry, they have understand that the future will be the autonomous driving car, obviously. So technology and electronic, software and electronic will come together quite closely. So PricewaterhouseCoopers predicts that in the near future, the R&D departments of automotive industries in Germany will employ more IT guys than regular engineers. It's also a very interesting fact for you to take away. Think about what kind of skills, what kind of talents you need for the future to have a competitive business, to make a successful digital transformation. And wrapping this up, we all feel and probably don't understand, but we see the pace of change that technology puts on us, the demands and the pressure that human beings have to deal with. So I want to go deeper on that one and want to show you this guy. Actually, he's also right there. This guy is funny because he's carrying quite a couple of nice consumer electronics that we were all using back in the days, just like this. But what is the reality today? Today, and at least since Apple released this little device here, those smartphones, everything is in here. Everything we see on that picture, and much more. So those devices have more compute power. The first Apple iPhone had more compute power than the computer that sent the Apollo rocket to the moon sometimes in the 70s. So this is what we carry in our pockets. And we have barely wrapped our lives around those devices, right? Quick reality check. What's the first thing you guys do in the morning, even before you say hello to your partner? Do you probably switch off the alarm clock or check some messages or something on your device? I do it, and I'm probably addicted. Probably we are all addicted to those devices. But where are we coming from when we talk about technology? And this is where I start a little history lesson, but it's going to be very brief. We started somewhere back in the 50s with those huge mainframe computers. You've seen them, you probably know them. They occupy large space of your real estate. We still use them today, they're fine, but technology evolved and we came to what we call the second platform, the personal computer, also pretty common to every one of us. And I'm sure some of you still use a personal computer. Not a very flexible workplace though. Today, we look at the third platform and what Gartner calls the Nexus of Forces. Let me explain this briefly. What we do today is we do our work, we access the internet primarily through the mobile devices, smartphones, laptops, whatever. And thanks to the cloud, we expect every application, every service that we use to be available 24/7. We have a plethora of information to process and to deal with. And last but not least, we have a huge increase in reach thanks to social media. All this together is what we are experiencing today, at least in our private lives. And this bears a huge potential for your business to grow, to develop, but you have also to attract the right people to deal with it. Nice things are possible. The Internet of Things. We have smart fridges based on the third platform, on the mobile age. You can see on your iPhone what is in your fridge, whether or not that's necessary. A probably more helpful example is the medical training. So medical students can use a virtual reality glass to to train high risky surgeries, even without touching a human being and risk his life. So very useful at this point. And last year released on a German exhibition in Berlin is the rollable organic LED screen, which will definitely have an impact on how we consume news. Think about the newspapers, think about books, but also in terms of workplace design, think about those huge black screens that are probably will not be there in the future anymore. So this is all possible thanks to the technology evolution that we experience today. But let's have a closer look at social media. Why? Social media, those are the channels that your future employees know by heart, the digital natives. They grew up in the time with social media and they do social media. They don't have to learn it. They orchestrate the whole social media thing intuitively. Let's just have a glimpse what happens in 60 seconds in the internet. So you will probably be interested that there are roughly 50,000 Instagram posts within 60 seconds while I'm standing here and talking to you. We have 500,000 of tweets. 2 million Snapchats are produced. And last but not least, and this is an incredible number, 4.1 million hours of video content is watched within 60 seconds. And I could go on, those are really impressive 2017 numbers, but the bottom line here is your future workforce, the generations X, Y, aka the Millennials, Generation Z, they know this by heart. That's what they do. That's what they want to use at your workplace. So be sure you have an attractive workplace, the right tools to attract those new generations into your business. This is reality, but my observation show that this is not the business reality. Business reality is much more, we are stuck in the 80s. Somewhere in the personal computer area, probably raise your hand if you have a desktop PC still in your workplace under your desk, a little tower or something like this. Someone of you? Be honest? Honest. Well, that's a nice degree of digitization here. I like that. That's good. But the reality when I look into companies is they provide their employees with, for example, Lotus Notes, with old technology. Not necessarily bad, but it's not the state of the art. It's not what young people expect when they enter a workplace and when they have to work with it. And there's a visionary speaker, an author, who puts it that way. For the new generation, work is a brief period where they have to go and use old technology. Think about that for a second, and also map it to your business, to your workplace. What do you present? What do you offer your employees? But enough with the history lesson. I close it here, and I want to talk about the future workplace. So how does it have to look like, or how could it look like? It definitely must be more flexible and nimble. No surprise at that point. And technology must be an enabler. This is what we've learned already. So new generations want to work any place. We've seen this great little picture from Axel, the guy working in the woods. I love it. So they want to be able to do that. They want to be able to work anytime. I'm a good example for that. I have 2 little kids. So I want to bring those kids to bed in the evening. And if I have still work to do, I want to be able to do my work from home, anytime. Work should be device agnostic as well. What does that mean? Regardless of manufacturer, whether it's a Samsung, an Apple, an HP, or whatever gadget I'm using, I want to be able to work seamlessly with those devices and do my work. This can actually save you a lot of money. And I brought some numbers from a company called Cisco, a technology company. What they do is they enable their workforce, or actually 89% of their workforce, to work at least 1 day remote per week. So you can choose 1 day of the week and work remote. This saves Cisco 3 million hours of commute time, which is not necessarily productive time for their employees. 3 million hours translate to 370 million US dollars that Cisco saves and can reinvest in other topics. Besides, or better on top of that, they save $500 million of real estate cost. So add this up, you come to a number of 900 million US dollars that Cisco can reinvest in other urgent or interesting topics. Let's focus on the employee now. The employee wants to use state-of-the-art technology. Okay, we've understood that, we've learned that, fine. What is that? I want to have tools in an agile workplace where I work predominantly in the future, project-oriented. I want to see my colleagues. I want to have a one-click video conference experience, for example. We all know this little plugins from WebEx, or you name it, that we have to download, which delay every video conference like 5 to 15 minutes until everyone is on board. This is not possible in the future. Tech must work. Infrastructure needs to be invisible. Just imagine you want to switch on your device and you want to be connected to the network. I don't want to configure any complex VPN channels, whatever the IT guys tells me. It just has to work. That's what I need, what I expect. And do me a favor, if you provide your company or your employees with tools, give them a purpose, give them use cases, how to use those tools. I've seen a very crucial example where a CIO wanted to disrupt his workforce because he wanted to stimulate creativity. So he said, I take away Microsoft and the whole Office suite, Excel, PowerPoint, Word from you, and replaced it by another tool. The tool was great. It was actually the Porsche of communication tools. But what he missed, he did not explain his workforce why he did this and how they should use those new tools. He gave them a Porsche, showing them how to drive it in the first gear, but never mentioned there's a second till 7th gear. So acceptance went down dramatically, and you can really avoid that. Another example is my grandmother, very simple. I told her, let's do Skype video conferencing. The purpose, you can see your grandson much more often than physically. So she understood with the age of 82 what's the benefit for her. She worked it, and we did video conferencing quite for a couple of years. Nice. Talking about technology and employees, we must not forget the glue that holds everything together. So think about redesigning your working culture, your company culture, and think about those points that are today business reality, but not necessarily in the future. We have a very process-oriented work style today, but it will be much more agile, project-oriented in the future. Enable your workforce and productivity will go up. Think about the comfort zone. Probably people you need to shake them a little bit, literally speaking, and give them room to digest all of that change so that they can have a continuous learning experience to process all that new information and tools that you provide them with. Performance will go up if you do this. And also have a look at the processes. If you don't adapt your processes to new technology, they can slow down your business and efficiency goes down. The last point is my favorite one, the role of the IT guy. The classical IT guy. You go to his office, you have a question, he will fix your device, everything is fine. This is not how it will work in the future. You will buy standard software, commodity software, when we talk about communication, collaboration. You don't reinvent emailing, you buy it. So everybody has the same tools, standardized, everybody has the same questions, and there will be the same answers. So everybody will be the IT guy. You can ask your neighbor, he will have the answer for you, and vice versa. This will save you money. This will decrease the support investments that you have to make, and the satisfaction of user will go up. So wrapping this up, when we talk about a more automated workplace thanks to technology, we will also have more soft skills needed within our employees. Working with human beings needs communication skills. You need empathy. You need negotiation skills. Think about this as well when you instrumentalize technology. So the bottom line here and the key takeaway is technology enables you to great things, but it has to have a purpose, and you should always do things human-centered. Put your employee in the middle of everything. Let me close with a citation of Franz der Kaiser Beckenbauer, a German soccer legend against sports. He put it that way: technology doesn't score goals, but it can help you to score more goals. Probably you apply this to your business and to your future digital transformation. Thank you very much. Ilka will go deeper now on the people topic.
Turn this on, or is it? Hello. Hello. Thank you very much for having me. As Boris just said, I'm going to go deeper into the people side. At WorkingWell, Axel already introduced, we have a bit of a trifecta looking at space, technology, and people. So that's what I'm going to bring to the table. And I have to admit up front that workplace strategy, workplace design, I'm new to it, so I might not know all the terminology. So forgive me if I make any mistakes, but I'm excited to learn more from all of you today. So my background, why I'm here today, my background is in organizational psychology. And in Canada, where I studied and started my career, it's equally misunderstood. Nobody knows what organizational psychology is there either. So I'm used to having to explain what it means. No, I can't organize your closet. It's the noun organization, not the verb. And no, I don't psychoanalyze people that I work with, and I can't diagnose some kind of psychological illness. Organizational psychology is using the methods and using the knowledge of psychology, but applying it to understanding the workplace behavior. How do people interact? What motivates them? What scares them? How do they behave and think in the workplace? So that's what organizational psychology is. And you can already imagine how that now applies to my participation in the industry we're talking about today, workplace strategy, because people are the glue that binds us all together today. If the conspiracy theorists were right that the robots are taking over all our jobs in the future, we wouldn't have a lot to talk about today because it would be a warehouse somewhere in the suburbs. We wouldn't be talking about design and exciting innovation. So people are what we're all working for. And what I'm going to start with is how do we operationalize human capital? Because I went into psychology because I'm what one might call a people person. I like people, I want to figure out people, I like to work with people, but I work with others who are not so intrinsically curious about people. So I have to put people in numbers for those who are not naturally curious about people. And so a really standard way to operationalize the people power is to look at what we call in HR turnover. Turnover in this context, I know there are other definitions of it, in this context is talking about the rate that a company loses employees per year that need to be replaced. Either you've fired them or they've quit and they need to be replaced. That's what we call turnover. How many a year, the percentage is your turnover rate. And this is not, depending on the size of your company, it's not often tracked, but it's a huge cost to companies. And I'm going to talk about the cost that companies incur when they're losing staff. So it can cost you anywhere between 1/3 and 3 times the salary of the employee that's being replaced. So if I quit, first of all, there's a period where my productivity goes down. There's a recruitment process to find my replacement. There is an onboarding. There's a training. All of that costs the company money. It's hard to track that. Therefore, my industry has provided with some statistics to estimate what that's costing you. Now, it's a big range, what that can cost your company, and this range depends on the amount of experience the employee has. So if we take this guy here, we'll call him Jim. Jim is making about 20,000 euros a year. He's in your bottom salary bracket in your company. He has minimal experience when he started. So when Jim leaves and needs to be replaced, it's going to cost you about 1/3 of his salary, roughly 7,000 euros, to replace him. It's not cheap, but it's not the worst. But if we look at calling her Bridget, she's one of your senior consultants. She's been with your company for 10, 12 years. She knows your industry in and out. She knows your clients. She's making 100,000 a year. When you lose Bridget and you need to replace her, it's going to take you a long time. You're going to have to recruit specialized, equally specialized people to get the replacement Bridget performing at this same level. You can consider that's going to cost your company roughly 300,000 euros, that replacement process. So these numbers obviously are worth looking at, and not that many companies are looking at these rates. So just to play with some math, what does this look like on an annual basis? Math is not my strong point, so this make-believe company has 100 employees. 7% voluntary turnover, so these are people who are quitting. This is the bad kind of turnover. You don't want this. It's okay if you fire some people because we're assuming that they're low performers. Voluntary is the bad kind of turnover. 7% is an average German statistic. There is no ideal rate. Sometimes you want higher turnover, sometimes you don't. This is crude average that we're working with. So we can assume you lose 1 executive a year, 2 mid-managers, 4 juniors. That's going to cost you about $500,000 a year if you're losing these people at this average rate. So this is just to give you some context of reframing your human assets in that way, that they are an asset, that they're costing you money when you lose them. Too often, budgets are looking at your employees as deficits because you have to pay them, but actually, if you frame it this way, they're assets, which I'm going to talk about why you have to care about your employees and your clients, of course. So people will leave a company for any number of reasons. The number one way to predict when somebody is going to quit your company is to look at your employee engagement. And engagement in this context is talking about a specific, going back to psychology, a specific psychological state of being. Sounds complicated, it's not. You can be happy, you can be sad, you can be frustrated, you can be engaged. And engaged is talking about a state of mind when you're working. And so in this context, you can understand employee engagement when you look at the 3 constructs that make it up. Energy is talking about how much energy are you willing to put into your work, and how much resilience you have against the challenges that come between you and your work. Flow is talking about that feeling that you get when you lose yourself in a project. Time flies by. It's really that the focus where the world blurs around you. Dedication is how personally committed and aligned are you with your work. Does it feel significant to you? This combination paints a picture of what it means to be engaged in your work. It's a good feeling. And engagement not only predicts turnover, and by predicting I mean if you are measuring your employees' engagement, it's a really simple survey that any number of consultancies can offer. Make sure it's a validated survey, but it's not rocket science if you get it from a valid source. So if you're measuring your employee engagement, you can predict when people will quit, but it's also correlated to other business results. If your employees are engaged, your customer engagement will go up, your employee well-being, which is a big topic today, will go up, your employees' productivity, we've already talked about many times, will go up, and today we'll talk about the workplace satisfaction. There's a correlation between the two as well. And it's negatively correlated with your workplace accidents. If your employees are engaged, they will have less safety incidents, and there will also be less absenteeism, which means employees calling in sick when they're not actually sick. So this is the business case for understanding and being curious about your employees or your clients' employees' engagement levels. So now, the future of the workplace, which is why we're all here today. If I look at the future through the lens of people, we have a problem. And the problem is we have a labor shortage. And the labor shortage in this context is not talking about unemployment numbers. That's quantitative labor shortage. We're talking about the qualitative labor shortage. And this means there's a surplus of jobs and a shortage of skilled workers who can fill those roles. So there's a misalignment with what job seekers have, their skills they have, and what's needed in the workplace. And this is happening today, but it's being described as a labor crisis for the next 20 years. Boston Consulting just published a report saying 12 out of the 15 biggest economies are going to experience a labor crisis in the next 20 years. This is in one part due to the changing nature of work that Axel already referred to, the shift to knowledge work, but also has a lot to do with the fact that the baby boomer generation is about to retire, starting to retire. and they will over the next 10, 15 years. And so that's a huge number of employees that are leaving the workforce. So who takes over? Who are the people of the future? They're already here today. Boris and myself belong to this generation, the Millennials. So the Millennials are the future workforce, and they're in the workforce right now. When I started my master's in organizational psychology, the word kept popping up everywhere, Millennials, also known as Generation Y. It's the same thing. Millennials just refers to the time at which this generation first entered the workforce, which was around the year 2000. You belong to the Millennial generation if you were born somewhere between the early 80s and the late 90s. And so I kept hearing about the word Millennials in conferences, online platforms, research. Everyone's trying to figure out who are they, what do they want, how do we figure them out, how do we get them? Labor shortage, right? We need Millennials because we don't have enough employees for our future roles. And so I wanted to figure out how can we compete in this war for talent that's describing the labor shortage? How can companies compete in this war for talent? And I thought, understanding Millennials. So I spent 2 years studying Millennials, which I thought I'd never want to hear the word ever again after 2 years. I took a series of selfies over these 2 years of research, documenting, reminding myself never go into academia ever again. And a little tangent here, if you'll allow me one. I know I'm short on time. I'm about to challenge some stereotypes that Millennials have. One stereotype that I will not challenge is narcissism. Millennials do scale higher on the narcissistic scale compared to their older counterparts. And this is evidence of it. I took selfies of research. I'm a millennial. I'm a narcissist. So I won't challenge that. But I will challenge others. So what I wanted to do was find out what can organizations do to engage their millennial employees. I talked about what is engagement. I didn't talk about what causes engagement. So I was looking at millennials specifically. And so before I tell you my results, I would imagine that there are some reactions to the word millennial, because I often had that when I was telling people what I was researching. I had pretty predictable results, or not results, pretty predictable reactions to the term millennials. And if it was, actually I'm not gonna say who yet, this came up all the time. Millennials, they're narcissistic. Already talked about that, not gonna go back there. They're disloyal, they're entitled, they're lazy. Get that all the time. But there's also some positive traits that people say about millennials, that they're innovative, that they're global citizens, they're very international, they're good team workers. And if I were to ask you in the room what kind of reaction you have to the word millennials, I could predict, based on some psychology knowledge, who is having the positive and the negative reactions. Millennials don't tend to cause them to describe themselves in those negative ways. They're more likely to describe themselves favorably. And this is what psychologists call in-group, out-group bias. Very predictable. Humans favor other humans who are similar to them and are more negatively judgmental of humans that are different than them. That's not inherently bad. There's a reason for this. Humans are tribes people, and it causes community, it causes culture, it causes friends, this in-group, out-group bias. But it also causes problems. Racism, prejudice, and in my topic, ageism. So this bias is not founded in fact. That's often subconscious. So I want to challenge this bias that we have of your coworkers who might be of a different generation than you. And so what did I find out? What do they want from the workplace? What engages them? Oh, entitled. I'm glad I bolded that so I can remember to tell you that entitled comes up the most often. Entitled here is meaning managers and executives are irritated by how quickly millennials want something. They say, when I started my career, I had to earn that project. I had to earn that office or earn that training and development opportunity. I had to do 2 years of grunt work before I saw my first client. I hear that all the time. And so that's what we're talking about, entitled. People are assuming that they're wanting too much before they've earned it. And I actually saw some heads nodding. So yes, you've experienced this. But what I would like to reframe that as is to remind you about the labor shortage today. So instead of judging them for being entitled, reframe it that millennials are a scarce commodity in today's labor market. And so while they're being picky and choosy about what they want from the workplace, they're doing so because they can. Because they know if they don't get what they're looking for from you or from your clients, they'll go next door. Take away the judgment. Look at it as fact. They're doing it because they can. So you have to be competitive in today's market. Okay, what do they want? There were 7 factors that came up that organizations can influence to engage, attract, retain their millennial employees. Job mobility means the opportunity to change roles within a company. Job responsibilities means what do they do 9 to 5? Obviously that matters to their engagement. Their leadership, the L&D stands for learning and development in the HR industry. Those are themed, you can see a loud learning theme on that side of the scale. And the other ones are more lifestyle-based. The environment in this case refers to the organizational culture and the physical workplace. Balance, work-life balance. There's no evidence to support the stereotype that millennials are lazy. There's some early evidence to suggest they might have the highest rates of productivity, based probably in large part to the fact that they can use technology to increase their productivity. And of course, pay. Pay is in the top 7, but it's not number 1. Some evidence to suggest this is the first generation where pay is not the top motivator. Again, that's taking away from that entitled stereotype that they have. But you have to be competitive. So what can you do as a company? What could you suggest your clients do? Where is your time, or where are your resources best spent? Job mobility. Allow your millennial employees to shift jobs within the company. It's going to save you money than having them leave to go to another company for a different job. Make sure that when you're advertising positions in your company that you're being accurate with what the job entails. Don't zhuzh it up to make it sound sexy to get some great employee to come work for you, because if it's not accurate, they're going to be disengaged. They're going to leave. Leadership, invest in leadership development. Don't just promote someone because of their seniority. What leadership qualities does your company and your people need? Make sure that it's specific to your company and your people's needs. Don't buy something off the shelf. Create a learning culture, offer stretch assignments, encourage mentorship relationships. In the environment, which is what we're talking a lot about today, find out, what do your people want? Have means to listen to those water cooler conversations. Use your employee surveys and your focus groups to really find out what is our culture and how is the space supporting that culture. Balance. Keep track of your overtime hours. And if you're millennials, or if any of your employees are working a lot overtime, consider offering a Flex Friday in exchange for it. Allow them to enjoy their spare time still. And pay, of course, find out what the competitors are paying. Try to be competitive. If for some reason you can't, you're a startup, you can't offer the same salaries, you have 6 other ways to try to be competitive. So advertise yourself as a great employer with those other 6 attributes if you can't, for some reason, pay competitively. A lot of people are curious why technology doesn't come up on that list for millennials. And considering what Boris just talked about, I could see that that would appear to be a disconnect. We did talk about this, so this isn't a mistake. This is where I would encourage you all to be critical of how data is interpreted. So just because millennials are more tech savvy, they're digital natives, it doesn't mean that that's required for engagement. Think of it as a tool to productivity, what Axel and Boris already said. It enables them to work. I'm going to oversimplify this with a comparison. Technology is like a nice chair. If you have a beautiful, ergonomic, top-of-the-line chair, you don't really think about it because it enables you to work. You notice that chair when it's broken, when it has a spike digging into your back. Technology is a bit like that. If it's working well, you can get a lot done. If it's not working well, you're going to stop getting work done. So while technology is important, it's a side. It's not the same as engagement. It's productivity. They're correlated. And ping pong tables. Ping pong tables in Canada is kind of this metaphor of what do millennials want in the workplace. Beer fridge, kicker tables, ping pong tables, all the startups have them, they must want them. Does it make a difference to your day-to-day work, millennials in the room? No, it doesn't make a difference. It's icing on the cake. It's nice if it's there, but if the cake's missing, the icing is kind of silly. It's almost insulting. So what I want to leave you with is, okay, no, before I do, what if they don't want the kicker table? What does this mean for your influence on employee engagement? Steelcase, which I'm sure you are all familiar with, I wasn't because I'm new to this industry, office furniture, office strategy specialists, partnered up with Ipsos Reid, which is one of the world's biggest employee engagement researchers, and they did a big international study on how does the workplace influence employee engagement. And their #1 finding, I think this was published last year, yeah, 2016, was in relation to this question that they asked employees around the world. Can you choose where to work within the office based on the task that you are doing? You probably already know the answer to this, but those who responded positively to this question also responded positively to their engagement scores. So you can see there's a strong correlation with the freedom to move around the workplace based on the project and the kind of work that you need to do. So of workplace designers, you can have a critical impact on employee engagement and everything that affects. So what I want to just tie this up with, if you forget everything that I've said because you're more design-oriented, you don't really care about the people side like I do, I just want to leave you with the idea that we are currently and will continually be in an era of a war for talent. And if you and your clients want to be competitive in that war for talent, especially with the millennials right now, to know your people. Be really conscious of what are your biases and what is fact. So know your people. Use valid ways to find out what your people and your clients need, and to invest in your people, to see them as assets, not as deficits. So to take the time and the money to take care of your people. So I'm going to leave you with that, and Axel's going to wrap up.
Super. Super. So thank you. I'm sure you enjoyed the interesting speech from Ilka and Boris as well. Hot topics that we are looking at into WorkingWell about the place, technology, and the people. So finally, we will give you our 5 key statements, how we see the future of work and the workplace. 5 key statements. Well-being will be a key driver for performance in the workplace. Offices will become more informal and less standardized, which is completely the opposite to what we saw like 10 years ago. Digital transformation needs a redesign of culture. Technology without purpose is useless. And know and invest into your people. Those are our 5 key statements. And Boris, could you come before? And if we have 2 minutes left, which we should have, so 1 minute, okay, you need to be faster. If you could take out your smartphones, everybody, we've prepared a quick real-time survey. So you just have to enter. No, it's not that easy. So we will give you a minute more.
Just open your browser, type in this URL. It's anonymous, so you don't have to leave any data or anything. And you will be guided directly to a quick survey.
Yeah.
You can evaluate our statement and we will see the results.
So we try. And then what should pop up is our 5 questions or feedback about the 5 key statements that how we see the future. And then also the last one is about, is your business prepared for the future workplace? Next time we will find a different way, like a barcode or in advance or something like that. Yeah, do a photograph, a shortcut. Yeah. But this was, yeah. Doesn't work? Doesn't work? Oh. Doesn't work? Okay. So then we will send it to you. I think when we have your email address, we will send it to you by email, and then we would be very happy if we got your feedback about our statements. Okay. So thank you very much.